Good evening, everybody. Again, welcome to our extraordinary meeting of overview and scrutiny resources on the, what date are we on? 8th of October. It's a Wednesday and it's 5 p.m. So that's lovely, exactly. We've got various committee members here tonight and a number of non-committee members. I haven't had any requests for anybody to speak. Just noting that.
We noted.
So now let's move on to the agenda was published on.
Chairman, might we just ensure we know who is here from the committee? I'm a little confused as to who is here.
Yeah, well, should we go around the table and introduce ourselves? Councillor Jane Austin.
Councillor George Murray, I'm a member.
Councillor Andy McLeod, I think I'm a member.
If not, he's substituting for Andrew Lawton.
I'm Peter Martin, I'm definitely a member.
Michael Higgins, I'm a member.
Richard Steiger, I'm a member.
Peter Nicholson, and I'm a member.
Maxine Gale, and I'm a member.
Okay, non-members.
Not Tudors.
Councillor Liz Townsend, portfolio holder for planning and economic development.
Thank you.
Councillor Mark Merriweather, portfolio holder for finance and assets.
And council portfolio secretary of the council.
And I'm delighted that we've got officers here. Do you all want to introduce yourselves before we get going?
Yeah, Abby Lewis, Assistant Director for Regeneration Economic Development.
Candice Keat, Head of Finance.
Debbie Smith, Development Programme Manager.
Caroline Wallace, Strategic Asset Manager.
Ezra Wallace, Joint Strategic Director, Economy Planning and Place.
Hi, I'm Alex Pollock, Joint Assistant Director for Democracy and Governance.
Thank you. Kim.
And Kimberly Soane, Regulatory and Review Advisor, Democratic Services and Clerking Meeting.
Thank you. So I'm chairing this committee tonight. We're in committee room 1 of the Berries and you are live. So do not swear. The agenda was published on Tuesday the 30th, 2025, and a supplement was published last Friday, the 3rd of October. Do we, I'll move to agenda item 1 and then we'll, and 2, and we'll talk about the order of the meeting at that point, I think, because we need to do some work on that. So any apologies for absence and substitutions, please?
Yes, we have apologies from absence from councillors Jerome Davidson, Andrew Lawton and Zoe Barker-Lomax, and we have Andy McLeod here as a substitute.
Thank you. Any declarations of interest?
None received prior to the meeting.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from members of the public?
No, and no members, no questions from members either.
Thank you. Well, we're already on to agenda item 5. That's brilliant. So, as per my email to members earlier, given that we are partially exempt to this meeting, I think it does make sense that we'll talk about 69 High Street first, and then we will move on to exempt item 6, the property investment report.
Sorry, Chair, do we have to vote in your vice chair for the meeting?
Oh, you're such a good point. I would like to vote in a vice chair, please. Would anyone like to be vice chair?
I'll do it.
Would anyone like to vote for Councillor Murray to be vice chair?
Yes.
Ideally, you have a proposal in the second.
Yeah.
I can propose.
I'll second.
Thank you.
Okay.
Was that agreed by general assent?
Agreed.
Thank you.
Thank you. So it's my intention to do as much of the 69 High Street item in public as we can. And then if we have queries, maybe we can list them and talk those in exempt. So if we can, let's try and get some recommendations as a group pulled together out of exempt as well, first of all. So on that note, therefore, I would be grateful if Abby and Debbie could present the item. Thank you.
So I was going to kick off if that's okay.
Oh,
So with your permission here, we'll present the item. We've got a very short number of slides which we can share just to take you through the content, distill what's in the papers that have been published already. So thank you for the time this evening. So this is a pre-decision scrutiny of an item ahead of going to executive and then on to subject to the executive's decision onto full council on the 69 High Street development project. We've suggested in the papers a couple of key areas where we'd certainly value the insight and recommendations from this scrutiny committee. And I'll just highlight those, then hand over to Debbie and Abby, who can take you through the detail of the report. First area was the report sets out a series of options that have been considered by officers. And we very much welcome the committee's feedback on those options. We very much value the feedback of the committee on whether there's any alternative options that should be considered as part of this decision. We'd value the feedback from the committee on the committee's view about whether the best option has been recommended for decision or whether alternative options should be considered, particularly in light of the council's best value duties. And we'd also value the committee's feedback on whether.
I can't hear him when you're speaking, dear, sorry.
Oh, I did. Sorry.
That's all right, when they're talking here, I can't hear you, sorry.
That's quite all right. And the final suggestion from us is we'd really value the committee's recommendations on whether you think the risks have been adequately considered or whether there are any other risks or issues we should consider as part of the decision. So I will now hand over to Debbie Smith, who's the development manager, who's going to take us through the report in front of you.
Yeah, thank you as well. Oh, perfect timing, thank you. I don't want to talk about life. So if we're just going to give you a short update of the project so far and so delve into the options proposed. So if you could skip on to slide 3, please. Lovely. So just an overview of the project. The site is an opportunity to deliver affordable housing as an enabling for the commercial element that we're talking about tonight. So we've approved a 2-stage project process back at, with council to progress the commercial element of the project first of all, and that's what we're talking about this afternoon. We have an agreement for lease in place with with Loungers, who are a all-day eatery restaurant kind of company that have got quite a few restaurants in the area, but very keen to come to Godalming. Thank you. So just in terms of the activity that we've done so far and just a bit about what we will be doing should we progress to the next stage. So we have received, or we submitted planning application in March 2024 as a result of a decision from council in August 2023. It obviously took a bit of time to submit the planning application. We had to do procurement process and also complete River Stage 3 design to submit that. We managed to get the approval of the planning application in the summer of 2024, and we also had agreed the agreement for lease before submitting the planning application. So all of that was in that time. During the planning submission, while waiting for planning approval, we did do quite an extensive procurement process to get our next stage contractor involved with, so they could do the stage 4 design and into the build contract. So we went out and had did a design and build procurement process, which unfortunately wasn't successful. We had to retest the market and go out again, and that's when we got the construction contract in the form of a pre-construction services agreement, which we came to executive in January 2025 to be able to enter into that part of the contract. Following that, we worked with that contractor to complete the design stage 4, which is basically detailed design up to contractor's proposal, so that we've got package of works for contractors to then price against. We received our pricing in the summer and have obviously spent some time evaluating that price. We have an employer's agent on board who's been supportive of that and making sure that any provisional sums originally proposed have now kind of come down and been secured. And also talking to us about what kind of risk items that are still there and making sure that we've got our budget and our going forward. So our next stage is to come to council or executive for approval to enter into the contract. And as we know, at this point, we will also having to look for some extra budget as well. Should that go ahead in October, we will look to start on site in December. So there'll be a 4 or 5 week enabling part for the contractor before they start on site to demolition and hand over in the summer to Loungers. And Loungers have talked about a 6-week fit out. So they're quite swift once they get into the shell and core. Thanks. Just to remind you of the plans, so I've just put an extra little black line on this because just for you to see how big the building is. The black line is the building. The other bits on the kind of with the blue line are kind of surface, a bit of car parking and bits and pieces. So the extent of the demolition, or the extent of the building is the black line. And then the proposal is to build the commercial element in the second picture, or a plan that will be just for the commercial, and then the remainder of the site is for the housing. So you can see it's like 2/3 of the site will ultimately be there for the development of the housing. Okay. Yeah, just a bit more detail on that. This is what planning have approved. I think the key thing here is all the servicing for the commercial property comes from the front onto the high street, so that you don't have any interaction with the rear of the site for the housing development, because that kind of interface there. So it's completely separated across the 2 floors. We've got a ground floor space for the restaurant, and then upstairs would be kitchen and further space for customers and ancillary bits and pieces there. Just to reiterate, this is the project for us is the shell and core only. So although on that previous plan you had some toilets and bits and pieces, we'll just be delivering shell and core, and Loungers team will come in and put all their fixtures and fittings and air handling and bits and pieces in to deliver the actual end product. Obviously it's quite extensive demolition. From the previous plan you can see quite a lot of demolition work to do. The structure, I thought it'd be worth touching on this, because the structure's been quite a subject to kind of debate from various structural engineers. Had a couple look at it to see whether we could retain the structure, because it's obviously we would like to be able to. Once they got onto site in stage 3, 4, actually really testing that structure and looking at the kind of ground floor foundations as well, it's quite difficult to retain it. In fact, it's more cost effective to renew it and have a completely new structure. And obviously you can see, remember from, and obviously you know the property from the high street, you've got the party walls either side, which will require kind of support throughout that process as well. So it's quite a it has been, we really wanted to retain it, but it's not possible, but it has kind of added a little bit to our costs in that sense. Just to reiterate there, the enabling to the housing development at the rear of the site, and we are fully working in conjunction with the housing team, looking at things not just like servicing, but underground like drainage and things like that, to make sure that we're all coordinated, ready for that housing development to come forward. And just touching on some of the sustainability points, we're looking to have a kind of what we call a blue roof to support drainage and climate change, basically, and obviously some solar panels. There'll be no gas there at all either. So thank you. Am I doing this? So there's, I touched on this earlier, but the pre-construction services agreement was the way we had to do the last stage of design, and then we've looked at how we kind of minimise the costs that have come back. So we are working closely with this unemployed agent to make sure that all of those costs are best value. We've got a full best value report from them in draft, but we are nearly there to make sure that if we're ready to enter into contract, we've got all the agreed prices and plans that we can really hold them to on that. And obviously we've got some exempt numbers coming forward should that be something you want to discuss. So, but I think that's it. I think you. Thank you.
So just to recap in terms of the options, which are captured in your report in more detail in exempt appendix 1, the officers are presenting these for consideration. So option 1 is, as it says there, to continue with the project by appointing a contractor, recognising that there are revised timescales for payback due to increase in cost, and that's the recommendation present. Option 2, do nothing, pause the project and retain the asset in its current form. Option 3, put the property on the market and seek to divest the asset as soon as possible. Option 4, deliver the commercial fit out and then put the property on the market, having secure consent for residential development to the rear. Or option 5, which is to complete the commercial fit out with a view to sell the commercial asset only once the work's completed and the tenants in place. And in terms of those kind of considerations around the disposals, we have had a evaluation completed by a third-party surveyor to inform that and the figures that are included in your pack. Just in terms of kind of risks, there are a number that was picked out in the report, but I thought it'd be helpful to touch on that. Sorry for the typo in the first line. But ultimately, there's invariably a risk with construction projects that you discover things as you get on site, and how you deal with those often may come with cost. In terms of mitigation, we've included contingency within the budget proposal. I guess that's the key role of where our employer's agent quantity surveyor come in terms of ensuring that any variations are actual true variations and they don't sit already within the gift for the contractor to deal with, and that the assessments of those are done appropriately. Just in terms of that kind of contract management element, we're proposing to use a JCT 2016 with amendments to manage cost and programme. And again, that's really where the role of an employer's agent comes in to ensure that it's being executed in the correct way. In terms of risk around programme, clearly there's an agreement for lease, as Debbie's mentioned, with the prospective tenant lounges. We need to deliver to programme and ensure that that aligns with the expectations of the tenant in terms of when they'll have it for fit out. The conversations with the prospective tenant have been ongoing throughout the design process, and they have been well informed as to where we are and what the likely programme is for handover. But we are looking to review the agreement for lease and ensure that the timeframes of our delivery programme are reflective of that in the agreement for lease. And then finally, there's a risk around the lease. So the lease, as is mentioned in the papers, I believe, is on the basis of a 10+5 year term, which means that lounges would have the ability to break at 10 years, should they so wish. There's an allowance for voids within the appraisal. So that is one kind of element of mitigation should that scenario arise. But on the flip side, should they seek to stay or remain for a longer term, there is provision within the lease with an upwards only rent review from year 10. Just mindful that when we came to committee, was it last week, we're all together again, that there were questions around the housing element. So just to provide a bit more information on that, the design team progressing through REBA stage 3, and as you see on the screen, there's a kind of continuity in appointment, which I think has brought great benefit to where we are. So the architect involved in the commercial element has been supporting on the housing element of this. At the moment, we're looking at between 10 and 12 affordable homes on the site. I appreciate the questions raised by the committee in terms of when the business case is going to be coming forward for consideration. We're targeting December 2025, and that will need to come through executive and committee. And I would assume that this committee is also interested in reviewing that. And that would be ahead of submission of a planning application in early 2026. And in that regard, we are, I think we're quite comfortable that once the decision's made, we will be able to move quite quickly into planning. We're also having ongoing discussions with Homes England, which is you would expect, and that's the same as what we do with our other schemes that we're delivering. So that's in respect of understanding and what level of grant the council may be able to secure to support the affordable element on the scheme, and those are ongoing. And then all assumptions on the kind of page in front of you coming true, we would expect to be starting December 2026. And I guess just to kind of recap on why it's a kind of year-long process that it takes from getting the decision by council through to starting on site. In public sector, we obviously have to go through a procurement process to ensure that we're achieving best value. We would look to procure likely a design and build contract for a design and build contract, but we would look to do some early market engagement testing to see whether that's a most appropriate route. We'd then have stage 4 design and then clearly a pricing period before we then mobilise and start on site. So that's where we are in relation to the housing element. And I think that's really what we wanted to cover, Chair. Just put up there kind of the points that Ezra covered previously in terms of areas that we feel it would be helpful to receive some feedback on, but I appreciate you may have other questions for us and so Thank you.
Thanks very much, all. Should we start with, let's have some questions and then a discussion between us on issues which are not exempt. And then we'll try and put forward some recommendations outside in the public forum. And then I think if we need to, we'll then go into exempt to discuss more of the detail on the specific options 1 to 5, because I'm not sure we can do that. Not an exempt. So I was just, I'll kick off with a question, then I'll ask for the group to do that as well. First of all, could you just confirm, first of all, this is the housing cannot proceed unless the commercial element is, this work is done to the commercial element. So these two are completely intertwined.
Yes.
Yes, and therefore, I suppose the question is really, like, we are being asked to make a decision on something that will impact the whole, but we've only been given half of the detail, as in related to the commercial element only.
Sorry to be clear, this committee isn't being asked to make a decision.
Also, okay, fine, yeah, we've been asked to produce recommendations. Fine, thank you. So I suppose that would be my first query, or could you just confirm that that is the case?
Yeah, I think that's the case. As I've set out, we'll bring forward the business case for the residential in due course. I think we've provided information on the valuations, which include an element, you know, if the site's been appraised on the basis of residential for part of the rear, so you have an understanding of what that is. But yeah, at the moment, we are not asking you to kind of opine as to whether the housing comes forward or not.
No, but we're being asked to make a recommendation
you are.
on whether the council should spend the money, which impacts the whole of the site. I suppose that's the point. Yeah, because one can't proceed without the other.
Correct. That's correct basis. Yeah.
Okay, so I'm going to ask, do any of the committee members have any questions? Do they want to keep talking? Councillor Murray?
Debbie, thank you. And so the steel frame, which, and this is what we're asking for the money for, predominantly, for this steel frame, which is going to go inside the building, right? So the structural engineers looked at it and said, this is not strong enough, it won't support it. But will it not support the existing steel frame, which is in there, holding the second floor up, the first floor, call it? Is the only reason why we need a stronger steel frame is because the kitchen is going to be upstairs and it's all that heavy kitchen stuff all upstairs. And if it was a different retail thing, so the shop, say, and it was storage, or you decided to make the first floor into flats, and you only need the ground floor face, because if you're building this amount, spending this amount of money on a steel frame so you can support the kitchen above it and the bar, then in the future, this is for 50 years, I imagine this thing. So maybe in 10 years' time, you won't need it. A different retailer comes in, and you don't need a strong floor to support the kitchen above. And I think that's the question I had. So is it something you have decided, or the structural engineer has decided the building needs a new frame, or is it the concept of having a restaurant in there which needs a new steel frame? And I think that's my question.
Yeah, okay, so no, but basically the kitchen does have additional loading, but not to any unusual levels. That's what because we ask similar questions.
Yeah, okay.
Absolutely. So that is not the reason. Ultimately, we had to get it to a building control and standard, the new standards, and that involves, it's partly to do the digging down and making sure the foundations are right as well. So we did look at whether we could add in more steel supports.
Okay. Or if you put the kitchen downstairs on the ground floor, not on the first floor.
So ultimately, we've been told very clearly by our structural engineer that it's more cost effective to have a new steel frame, despite whatever we would do in the building to bring up to current standards.
I see. Okay. And you're going to, sorry, one more question. Are you going to take the facade down and rebuild this facade?
No.
The facade is just going to be refurbished, it says. I think it says,
exactly.
right? So you're going to keep the facade and so it looks similar, but you just got to refurbish it.
So we will be replacing all of the windows and the doors and putting double glazing in, and
Yeah.
the first floor's got, you know,
Yeah.
sash windows. They'll be replaced, but a single glaze only,
Right.
because they need to stay in character
Right.
with the.
So you're not demolishing the front and building a new front?
No.
Okay.
Okay, Albie, you were gonna.
Yeah,
Oh, sorry.
just in terms of kind of the report from the structural engineer, so the existing steel frame and timber choice were designed for historic retail office use, and don't have the necessary capacity to support modern commercial loadings. And then in terms of disruptions from modifications, so where we're needing to incorporate staircases for means of escape and such like, it also doesn't conform with the requirements of those. So as Devin said, there's a combination of factors,
Okay.
which I think my reading of it is, regardless of use, the council would need to consider doing
Okay.
something to the structural.
Fine, because that's what I thought. So
Yeah,
if you're building a thing which is for a restaurant, which might be in 15 years, might not be a restaurant, might be something
Yeah,
else in the
I
future.
think,
And you've spent this money on something you may not need.
No, just to add to that, I think we've been really, so we've obviously got the contractor who's working for us and a design team who are working for us, and we've been very mindful about, what would be, it's not a project just for 15 years, it is a 50-year, and making sure that we're
Right.
future proofing and
Okay.
it can be used for
Okay.
other purposes.
Because it won't be good for loungers saying, yeah, we want a new steel frame.
No.
yeah, no.
Yeah, I mean,
They wouldn't,
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thanks. I mean, I suppose it does beg the question as to if we knew that that was going to be a commercial use at the front, as to why that wasn't identified at purchase, that would be needed to be done.
Can I?
Abby, go.
So I think the challenge is that, so as we progress through the different design stages, initially it was thought that you could reuse it, and that was the advice of the structural engineers at the time. But once we've done intrusive works, which you wouldn't do for us to purchase, I think that's fair to say, then it's now come to light that we need the steel frame.
Okay.
So I think the team that we had on board, looking at it from a structural perspective, did what they need to do based on the information they had, and only once we started kind of doing intrusive survey work has that.
And that wasn't identified as a risk at the time.
I suspect it probably was on a long schedule
Okay.
of design risks, but I think
Yeah.
you're pricing based on what you know at the time.
Okay. Does anyone else have any questions, Councillor Martin?
Thank you, Chairman. In August 2023, we approved, or council approved, the spend of just under 2 million to deliver the commercial element. That together with a later grant for 115,000 for asbestos. If we add in money from the HRA, we get up to an expenditure budget at that time of £4.5 million. At that time also, in the report, it said, and I quote, "The development needs to be progressed at pace," and it said that delay, and I quote again, "would result in the council incurring continuing holding costs for the asset." And also we were told that the time horizon for the commercial element needed to be within the 50-year MRP, the minimum revenue provision. And that 50 years was the estimated life of the commercial element. So we've now got to a point where we're saying that the payback in the paper says 47 years, and that's in the non-exempt section. We're getting very close to the 50 years, and it's pretty marginal, it seems to me, in terms of viability here. And I also note that there are additional costs, hidden costs, which are not included, and I'm grateful to Candice for providing us with additional costs. These are the holding costs, and to date, we have in some £174,000 of extra costs, which we've incurred mainly for business rates, which to date is £168,810 plus electricity and buildings and premises insurance. And these will continue, so that I would expect that figure to rise to nearly £300,000 by the time we get to a point, if we're able to hand over to loungers. And that's a pretty big sum of money. That, as I understand it, is not in the business case anywhere. It's not part of the viability. So that if you factored that in, the 47 years would be even worse. And then just getting clarification of that, if I may, and I think that's pretty significant. Additionally, of course, had we not made this purchase and had we not spent all this money, then we would have had the money available to invest. And Candice tells me that with the money that we've used so far, we would have got about £301,000 of additional interest up to now, which would have given us a sort of 8.5% return on the money that we've so far invested. And I don't think we're getting anything like that. Indeed, I suspect the figure is negative in terms of the return that we've got. So I've got another question as well, but I'd just like to ask whether that is correct. We don't see that reflected in the viability, and if we were to put that in, that would make 47 years even worse.
Yeah, so the sunk costs of 183,000, which are the standard running costs, are not included in the scheme. That's standard practice. You absolutely wouldn't include them in viability metrics because they are sunk costs and they are related to your original decision to purchase that asset and not the decision we're asking to make tonight. And yes, 301,000 is a hypothetical figure if you were to invest that sum of money. If you were to invest any sum of money that the council might spend in investment pots, you would obviously get a yield from that money. Yeah.
Okay, so I can just continue.
So can I just, but nonetheless, those costs do exist and they will continue to exist as a
They
cost to the
exist
council.
and they're
In
budgeted
your
for
life.
in the general fund revenue, absolutely,
Yeah.
yes.
Well, I was going to say a similar thing. I mean, yes, I understand that. And of course, if you have a project which is going to be delivered in a couple of years, those sorts of costs you tend to ignore. But when you have a project running to 5 and 6 years, as we're looking at now, these things become very significant. And I think we should ignore them at our peril. And I think when you factor in that, we have a case which is extremely marginal. And I have to say, I am very concerned now that we're spending an additional 540,000, or we want to spend an additional 540,000 on top of the 4.5 million we've already put in. And I have a real concern that we may be pouring good money after bad. The other factor is we'll probably have to cover the rest of it in the exempt session. So that does conclude what I want to say. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions at this stage? I've got a few comments. Yeah, go for it.
Yes, I wonder if you could sort of clarify what you said about, if Mark could clarify, what Candice has said.
Yeah, happy to. So in terms of the
Sorry, can I just check? I'm the chairman here, so I'll decide who answers the questions.
Point of
That's
order,
right.
Madam Chairman.
Thank you.
Point
Yes, Councillor Merriweather, please speak.
Thank you.
Thank you. Well, through you, Chair.
Thank you.
The business running costs, as Candice said, those sunk costs apply to every single option. So if you take them into account for option 1, you have to take them into account for option 2, 3, 4, and 5. In terms of the non-interest costs, yes, the business rates are in there. Business rates will go down, I expect, because we've applied for an exemption. We may even get a rebate for some of the business rates that we have already paid. And as Candice said, the 300,000 number that you quoted, Councillor Martin, is a hypothetical number. It's a theoretical number, assuming he wouldn't have spent the money somewhere else. And I do think no one's pretending this isn't a difficult decision and a very tough circumstance. But I think if you want to single out that particular metric, you do have to, in the same breath, justify why you wouldn't want to do that for any other capital expenditure, why you wouldn't want to take into account the opportunity interest when you're putting solar panels on top of a leisure centre, why you wouldn't want to put that opportunity cost on spending cash on the Thriving Communities Fund. You have to be consistent, and I don't think it's consistent in this case to do it. I just wanted to make that.
So, Councillor Martin.
Might I just reply to, yeah, I understand that, Mark, and if you've got a scheme, and this scheme was supposed to be delivered by now, and I think in the general course of things, if you've got a scheme for a couple of years, you're right, you would ignore those things. And my concern is that we've now got a scheme which is running to 5 and 6 years, and that we can't ignore it. And it's a very long scheme, and that's my concern. And 300,000 may be hypothetical, but actually, had we left the money there, and we would have earned that sort of interest, and that's money that we really would have accrued to the taxpayer of this borough. So I think it's maybe hypothetical, but actually it's pretty real.
Yeah.
But may I?
Yes, once.
Okay, thank you. I think Peter's point is very well made. But whether it's hypothetical or not, this is cash that may have gone somewhere else. You know, frankly, as we approach LGR, the cash balances that we may or may not be building up through interest or anything else is money that may very well go off to paying up Woking's debt.
Well, that's
So I-
a different story.
So I think, you know, we do have to have that.
I think we need to stay on track.
Can I just come back? You know, we're talking about, Peter mentioned this is a project that was supposed to be delivered by now. The original planning consent that we acquired with the property would have been delivered by now. But we decided when we bought the property, that's when we spent money on a feasibility study. The whole point of doing that was to look at new and improved planning consents, which is why we future-proof the commercial side of it, why we've done better with the residential. That includes, coming back to George's point, moving all of the residential behind the party wall rather than having the first floor as residential. So, you know, that was a big factor.
Okay, right, I think we'll move back to the committee now. Thank you. I think if it's okay, I'd like to open up a few points for discussion amongst the group, if that's all right. I've made some notes here, which I will circulate in a bit, but I just want to start off. So we note the acquisition price here was 2.313 million. So once the development is completed, that will be 5.4, sorry, this is the commercial only part of the development, which is approximately at the moment 40% of the development. So it's not just a housing development, 40%. In fact, most of the value right now sits with the commercial element. I can't go into the detail of that because that's exempt. But the acquisition price of 2.3, once the commercial development is completed, 5.4 million will have been spent, plus ongoing holding costs estimated at 285,000, maybe 300. So that will have been 5.7 million pounds expended by Waverley. So therefore, at that point, the total cost, negative cost to the council base will be approximately 3.4 million more than the purchase price. So that's the cost to the council. So of course the purchase price isn't the current valuation. The current valuation is likely to have declined, given the market, significantly since the 2022 acquisition of 2.313 million, which means that in reality, the cost, if crystallised now in the market, would be greater, the loss and or the cost. It's a mixture of costs and loss. So, and I mean, I think that is highlighted by the fact that the payback period has increased by 41 to 47 years, compared, as Councillor Martin has said, with the planned hold period of 50 years. Now, we note also that the budgeted rental income in the house for the retail element is £70,000. So that is what, over 10 years of income, that would be £700,000. The costs, this is my big issue, and I'd love to open it up for discussion with you all. My great concern here is that we are being asked to make a decision with one hand tied, a recommendation, of course, with one hand tied behind our back. Because the costs, we don't know yet what the costs for the residential element of the scheme are. They've not been provided in the report, but clearly this 540k, if proceeded with, impacts on both. So we have been asked as councillors to make a decision on a whole project, or a recommendation as on a whole project, but we've only been provided half of the information. I'm not comfortable making that decision because I think it may, when it comes to council, fail on the test of the Wednesbury principle, which is us having a legal and fiduciary duty to make informed decisions, essentially. Yeah, thank you, Councillor Pollock. Sorry, Mr. Councillor.
I was elected for a minute there. Okay, so just on that point, so I think it would be perfectly reasonable for the committee to say that you might say, for example, say if this went forward to exec or council in its current state, you'd be concerned about whether it's
Yeah.
full and complete for the decision makers to make that decision on. But you as a scrutiny committee could make recommendations based on what you have here, and the Wednesday principles wouldn't apply. So you could say we don't feel we've got the full information to make the recommendations we want to make. Or if you like, you could say something about the executive, we're concerned about whether the executive would have the information they need. So it's probably one or the other.
Well, let's discuss that as a group now, as to what we feel may be appropriate or not to go forward as a recommendation. So we've talked about ongoing costs. I think just in other notes that I would make is that the last report to council, it's clear now, did not make sufficient allowance for professional fees in inflation and build cost increases. I don't know if the group would like to comment on that. And my previous point about, are we happy that we have all the information that we need, or that the executive and then full council will have the information they need to make an informed decision. Does Maxine, do you have any comment?
Yeah, I find it quite confusing now, because when the building was purchased, it was purchased with the aim of some tenanted accommodation behind, which in all honesty did look like a good deal because it had the planning consent and all sorts of things, and the figures coming in seemed quite reasonable. Since then, it seems to have changed. It's morphed into something totally different. And now we're being told the whole thing is being knocked down and we're going to build a commercial unit, but we still don't know what's happening behind it. And I believe Homes England are now involved in this. So
is that correct? Sorry.
So, may I
Do you want to clarify?
Yeah, so as with any housing scheme that we're looking to deliver, we engage with Homes England. So Homes England have an affordable homes programme through which councils and other registered providers can secure grant funding. So that's on the basis that we're having the discussion with them. I think it's also worth touching on, previously we did bring forward a paper which sought to move money from that we'd secured grant funding from Bramford Land Release Fund, which is a grant that Homes England also deliver, and that was used to deal with the asbestos within the unit. So that's where we're engaging with them.
Okay,
thank you. Yeah, thank you. So we're looking at affordable housing behind there,
Yes.
not rented accommodation that's owned by the council anymore. Is that right?
No, so it would still be held by Waverley Borough Council. So affordable housing is a level of rent that you set. So you have social, which is around 55%, say roughly, it's a formula rent. And then we would do Waverley affordable. So not the traditional 80%, it would be 65, 70% affordable units is our proposal at the moment.
Okay. So it's all changed for me. So it's sort of got more and more complex, and there's still reinforcement. I mean, I'm really wondering why that didn't come up under surveys at the beginning, because surely when you buy any property, the survey will tell you what it's good for. And so that sort of, this is where this extra £500,000 is coming in, really, isn't it, on this steel girder, which I would have thought anybody giving a survey on a building would have possibly pointed that out. So I'm just a bit confused as to why that didn't come forward, to be honest.
Okay, does anyone want to respond to any of those points? Any officers? Thanks, Debbie.
Should I just take about the original planning commission? Is that okay?
Yeah.
Just to say, so that was the scheme that basically split the retail units in two and cut some of the back off, but then put another layer of property on the top, so you've got a second story. So first and second story would be flats and have some other flats and homes to the back. Ultimately, it was not a buildable scheme because it's in terms of from the structural survey since you know, it wouldn't have been possible because, as we can say, the current structure is not going to suffice just for the kind of commercial development as is, and it was very likely done to establish the principle of having a mixed-use development there in terms of housing and commercial, to just to allow to know that planning would accept that as a principle of development. So when we looked at it in full, after we purchased the asset and looked at the two, or the option and a different option, which is what we took forward, we absolutely went through all of that and said, can we build it? Is it good? It had overlooking issues, it had ventilation issues, it had like servicing issues. So it was a a plan in principle in terms of our building it. And we absolutely thought, brilliant, we know that we can get residential on this site, but we know that we're going to have to investigate if that's possible and see if we can do better, which I think coming forward with a split scheme and more units than that original planning commission.
I get where you're coming from, but we bought something that couldn't be built, basically, and you do wonder who gave the planning consent for something which had overlooking and all sorts of
It's not homes that we would have.
problems. So we actually bought something we couldn't develop. I can hear councillor saying
So-
wouldn't, but I mean, we couldn't.
Abby, and then I'll move on to the next question.
I think there's 2 points. I think as Waverley, we seek to deliver high quality housing, and I think what was consented was probably not in accordance with what we would look to include within our housing stock. So I think that's the point, that we could deliver it, but would we want to, and would it be the type of environment we want our residents to live in? Probably not. Just on the point around the surveys, I think it's a bit like if you bought a house and you decided that you wanted to do a massive extension on the back of it, like you buy the house, you get a builder come around who gives you an indicative kind of quote, but ultimately until you start doing further survey works in the ground to find out where things like utilities are, you don't have a firm cost. So, and I think that's probably the scenario that we're in with this, that we did do due diligence around getting relevant surveys done, but literally until you start breaking the ground, you don't know what's there. And I think that's the scenario that we're
Oh yeah, we've all been there.
Okay,
So it's
councillor
just-
Nicholson.
Well, thank you. I have a question. Do you want to now go into general discussion or do you want to go?
I mean, yeah, absolutely.
Okay,
If you've got
okay,
comments
fine,
you want to
thank
make, brilliant.
Yeah, just a few points here. Any sort of developments that can lead you to increase costs, because all the buildings are all sort of seeing remedial work. And this is a one-off. We've not done anything like this before. We've built social housing from new, but this is the first time in 6 years we really looked at something complex scheme like this, and it has such benefits. It regenerates a high street, it provides 10 social houses, so that's very good points there. The costs are going to be uncertain when you start to build these local things, as I said, so it's a one-off. So the question, where do we go from here? And I think you can really distill down to 3 basic options. And the first one is to simply to stop and leave it. And I've had a look at the site that's happened there. You simply can't do that when it's just a horrible mess and an attractive, very attractive high street. So I think that's just quite well said. Now, you can cut costs and you can sell, but this might be seen as a fire sale by developers. You might say, well, these people are on the run, they have to sell, but this is their decision. And so you might have a number of opportunistic low bids, which could be a problem. And of course, you get no social housing. You don't know what's going to happen. So the third option, I think, is, and I said there's no perfect option for any of this, but the third one, I think, is to proceed with the greater spending and with contingency. I think that's the only real path to follow, really. Thanks.
Thank you, councillor Nicholson. And councillor Higgins, you had some comments to make.
Yeah, I mean, I think I heard what you said about do we have the requisite knowledge? I think on balance probably we do, but I feel that actually there should have been a couple more options that should have been looked at and presented to us as a committee. The first one is, we touched on it really, is the existing or the previous planning permission to split out the 2 commercial units and build the 8 units out the back. I hear what you say, Debbie, but I have serious concerns to hear tonight that we bought a property or a site that we weren't happy with, in terms of how essentially we couldn't actually deliver or wouldn't have wanted to deliver, and that we would have basically gone for something else because essentially you're paying a price for the existing planning permission. The second point really is that almost a beefed up option 3, which is the actual valuation of the whole site, not just commercial unit, but the site including housing, what their value would have been for that. Now, both options might not be viable, but we don't have that information in front of us. So it's difficult then to sort of balance, go, okay, which one would we have gone for? Yeah, as I say, concerns really why we went ahead and paid a premium on the site really, and this has sort of come up before. I think that if we were to recommend going for the proposed option, the additional budget, I'd be wanting to know what we're going to do about mitigating the losses and trying to get better payback. Can we get it down from 47 years? And that, again, I sort of revisit, which I originally did in August 2023, is can we renegotiate the rent in essence, because the circumstances have changed for us.
Councillor Murray.
Thank you, Michael. I was just going to make that point. So it's 70k per annum for the next 10 years. That's what's been agreed.
Well, that's what's in the budget. We don't know the
okay, that's
specific
what.
details of the lease, but
Okay,
we can
so
make a
which
fair
are
assumption. But that's in the budget, so that's not exempt.
Yeah, so that's what's budgeted, 70,000 a year, so it could be less. We don't know. So could you just tell me the square footage of the whole retail element of it? My issue back in August 23, I remember it's my very first council meeting, evidently, I think, and it was pretty soon. And my question was, you know, are we're regenerating this space, but by subsidising so heavily loungers, they're at a massive competitive advantage towards any other hospitality business in the high street because they have a lot lower fixed costs for that same amount of retail space they've got to sell all their goods in. So I abstained, I remember, in 23 because I thought this was unfair, and being a hospitality business owner at the time, I thought, well, this doesn't seem very fair that the council is subsidising this property so much against if Wetherspoons or Coat or any other business wanted to open on the high street, they would be at a massive disadvantage over that 10-year period. So that was my issue then. So could you tell me what the square footage is of the whole space? Maybe if you've got a minute, I can have a look.
Councillor, can I just check that you're not intending to declare an interest if you?
No, I'm no longer.
If you're-
I'm no longer a business, a coffee shop. I was at the time, I think, and I did declare an interest, and that was the reason why I wasn't. Not anymore.
Can you just clarify, do you mean the current unit or the proposed in terms of square footage?
The proposed, yeah. If you could, yeah. The square footage of the retail space.
Looks on a because then you can calculate on a per square foot basis. Yeah.
Because the average in Guildford is, in Godalming High Street is about £30 per square foot.
It's a large unit, so it'll be quite low.
Yeah, 25 to 30. I think it says.
So, can I leave? I'll leave that with you, if that's okay.
We can find out.
Thank
Otherwise,
you. I mean, may I move on with some queries, if that's okay, at the moment as well? So I just want to. Sorry.
May I just
Yeah.
say that the action that you read, there's information exempt, so if you'd like to discuss what's in
We can talk about that later.
I'd
We'll
suggest we do
talk
that
about
rather
in
than
exempt.
make
Fine.
suggestions that
Yeah.
may or may not.
Yeah,
No problem.
but it's not part of this recommendation anyway, actually, to be fair.
Or it's part of the overall issue,
Yeah.
and hence there being part of it was that, so if you wish to discuss the part of the issue.
We can talk about that
Thank you.
in a
Yeah.
minute.
It's fine. It's just a point,
Okay.
part of the whole package, right?
So I think I just want to move on to some bits to do with the retail market and the way that the best value is being described in the public papers. And just I suppose that in arriving at recommendations, I'm concerned that the councillors, the committee, and then the executive are not actually being represented, that it's not representing the actual market position, what's in the report. So there's no discussion about the impact that a vacant unit has had on the market for the last 4 years on the high street. In my opinion, the report is looking very much in rose-tinted spectacles at the whole situation in terms of the impact that having that empty would have had for such a long time. And actually, I would personally like to move a recommendation to the committee that 6.7 of the public report is scrubbed completely because it's just not evidence at all. So, sorry, Alex, yeah?
I do apologise, you would describe it from the scrutiny report, the report to scrutiny report.
Well, and recommend that it's removed completely.
So just to help you formulate
Yeah.
the recommendation.
Yeah.
You might be suggesting that the scrutiny committee would recommend that that piece of the report wouldn't go into the report.
It won't
to
go
the
into the report to the executive because actually it's just not evidence. So it says here, in the period following the council decision to progress with the acquisition and feasibility, a number of private investors have expressed interest in the high street. The council investment is expected to encourage further private investment, as demonstrated by several units next door. That there is no causative or evidence to suggest that this vacant unit, the council buying this unit, has had any impact on Godalming High Street market whatsoever. In fact, I would say the opposite. The commercial market works as the commercial market. So the fact that what it should, a relevant point would be to talk about how the vacant unit has been to the detriment of the High Street and Godalming as a market. Councillor Follows.
Thank you very much. As scrutiny is supposed to be scrutinising the executive, it's very right that executive get to comment. We have had comment from at least one estate agent in Godalming that supports the position in the paper. I would also ask you to present evidence to support your position to the contrary. Bearing in mind we have at least one piece of evidence that supports what the paper said. I would gladly review your evidence to the contrary, please.
As a former chancellor who specialised in mixed use high street and retail investment,
We will welcome you to read it.
I'm very happy to provide you with evidence that actually this has been to the detriment of, but you know, I'm the chairman now, so thank you. So let's move on. Now, anyway, would anyone like to comment on what I'm also concerned that the report that's going to the executive contains no actual information on things like footfall, vacancies. We know that we've lost, for example, information on the, we've seen the High Street Waverley's done a report recently on footfall and vacancies, and there is none of that information in this report. So I would personally make a recommendation that that is put forward as well when it goes to executive. Thanks. Okay. Councillor Murray.
Can I make a comment? I mean, you know, none of the options are particularly palatable. We know that, right? And, you know, Mark will be nodding there. And, you know, do we lose 2.6 million over the year, or do we do 3.2 million, or do we wait 50 years to get, you know, crystallise the thing over that? None of them are palatable.
Exempt of information.
That's not exempt.
That's not.
If you do it all based on the current, and by the way, you're, you know, can we just, I'm the chairman of the committee, can we all just respect each other by being quiet at the points at which we're meant to be quiet? Thank you.
Okay. I'm trying to be fair, but I'm not trying to make an accusation. I'm trying to be fair. So I'm just saying that none of them are particularly palatable. None of them are particularly palatable, and you've got a tough decision, right? You know what I mean? But I'm just wondering, I suppose, have you got any regrets about if you'd have turned the clock back to 7 years ago, or whenever this decision was made, that, and, you know, and that's for everybody concerned, was gone, oh, I wish we'd never done it. And I know you can talk about, but I thought it was social housing going in the back, but evidently it's not. It's social housing owned by Waverley. Yes. Oh, okay. All right.
Well, why don't we?
But I'm just a little bit thinking, you know, we don't like the situation we're in. We're not happy with it all. It's all been a bit of a nightmare. We wouldn't have done it if we had to, but here we are. I think that kind of.
Councillor Murray, do you mind if I say, I think probably the point of us being here is to put forward recommendations, and we can say that in debate in full council, maybe that's the place for us to say that.
Just, sorry, just for clarity, it's not exempt to 10.2 of the report actually says 47 units, so.
Yeah,
so.
that's not exempt, and the purchase price of 2.3 million is not exempt, and all the costs to date of up to 5.6 million are not exempt, so that's very easy maths. Okay, sorry, Alex.
Sorry, I'm having indications from colleagues that actually discussing losses is exempt information. So I just wanted to make another point.
Well, it's a cost. We talk about cost.
But I think it would be prudent and responsible to move into exempt session if you wish to discuss issues that are attending close to the exempt information, please.
Sure. Can we move forward with some recommendations in open session, then we'll move into exempt then? Can I share, I think some of this needs tweaking. These are just some notes that I made to the committee members earlier, which we can maybe use as a starting point. Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry. So not getting 12 separate.
Well, we're not predetermined yet.
Is writing an active note sheet of predetermination, just out of curiosity.
Okay.
Those recommendations.
Okay, so as a starting point, I mean, I think we've made.
Point of order, Madam Chairman.
Are there any notes?
Have you got one?
Point of order, Madam Chairman. Is it not predetermination to hand out drafted recommendations?
The point I'm making, yeah.
Sorry, if you'd like me to. So no, it's not predetermination, I don't think. So if there's been a discussion in advance about recommendations that they might like to make, that'd be perfectly reasonable for the committee to prepare information and to share that with each other while they're here. They're not making a decision that they can predetermine. What I think is a reasonable thing to do is to make sure there's been a discussion about each of these recommendations at the committee with an opportunity for the executive to comment, so that you can be clear that your recommendations are, as best they can be put together, and that you're not making recommendations that might be missing a mark. So it would be prudent to make sure that there's been a question to the executive, let's say, on each of these issues, to give them an opportunity to comment. And if you're not happy with their response, then you might wish to make a recommendation on that subject.
Okay.
But you are at liberty, Chair, to conduct it how you wish. This is just about making sure that your recommendations are as efficient and effective as possible.
Okay. Right.
Shall I make a start? The first recommendation that is suggested here is that, and we did discuss this, is that many of us don't feel that we can proceed on this decision without seeing information on the whole scheme, including the residential element. The current recommendation report only includes financial information on the retail element. Without clarity on the residential, we don't think we need to make a fully informed and balanced decision. We've taken all sorts of decisions in the last 3 years, which perhaps if we were back at the beginning, we wouldn't have taken. And I, for one, don't feel that we have sufficient information, and I would like to see more before it comes to full council. That would be my, I would support a proposal for more information on the residential part. And I would also like to add that we would put in the additional hidden costs, at least as a note to all of the financial information.
Okay, would the executive like to make any comment before we arrive at our recommendation?
Just before Mark does, I would just like to object to the words hidden and unaccounted for. I mean, these are things that have been accounted for in a budget. They're not hidden, they're transparently provided and clear. So
I'm perfectly happy to put some alternative wording in, but they're not in the figures that we see. They're hidden from the costs in the papers that we have here. They may be in some budget, some in funds, but they're not a part. And I think we should have a note to the information that we're seeing here, which notes these figures.
And you will just have to give us a minute.
Sorry,
to receive this.
I'm chairing.
We're
this.
reading it now.
So. Yeah. Right, Councillor Merriweather, do you have any comment?
Through you, if I may. I think we've already talked about the holding costs. The holding costs are the same under all 5 options. So they're there, whichever one you want to go through. I think it's important under bullet point 2.
Sorry, can I just clarify? They're not though, because one of the options is to dispose, so that.
We won't get our sunk costs back if we dispose.
So.
There won't be any ongoing.
There is. It won't be an ongoing whole.
You're absolutely right, but actually the analysis that you've got doesn't start in calendar years. It starts at years. So the analysis assumes that from the day we start, Some of the costs will be there, not all of them. But I suppose you could make the argument.
They're not all there.
If one is quicker than the other, if it takes a year to hand over to loungers or takes 9 months to hand over to loungers from today, there will be 9 months worth of costs,
So, which would be
assuming
100.
that you would be able to fire sale the wholesale.
Yeah, so that would be £100,000.
Yes.
Yes. Okay. Did you have any
Okay.
other?
Just on the second bullet point, I think it is important to recall that you're not, what we bought compared to what we're considering tonight is not a like for like. We bought a property with planning consent. We agreed at the time in 2022 that we'd spend £150,000 on a feasibility study to optimise the site. And in August 2023, we approved that optimisation plan, which was, part, not all, but a part of the cost increase at the time. And I haven't had a chance to actually go through the rest of it. There's quite a bit here. If you'd allow me to come back, if there's anything else I could find, I'd be very grateful.
Okay, thank you. I think I would, just on that recommendation, I would just make the point that although the planning permission was different, it was not massively different in terms of capital value basis, and the market has declined since then, which would crystallise greater cost or loss. So anyway, how do we all feel about that recommendation in terms of proceeding forward with? Sorry, Abby, did you want to comment?
Thanks, Chair. Yeah, just one minor comment, and it's just a kind of health warning, so to speak. I think there's some work for us to do, which would be just to consider what the implications would be of a delayed award of contract. So clearly, we've got a tender cost at the moment that's ETEC have submitted. They usually only last a certain period of time. We've already asked them to extend it. So there's an implication there that we need to consider whether there's a cost increase. And then similarly, obviously there's a conversation with loungers. So it's in amongst all the kind of considerations of them.
That's a good point. Thank you. In terms of timing, we understand that you're going to come forward in December on the commercial element. So it would be a case of waiting 2 months so that we would have a fuller picture and could view this in the round. Personally, I would be in favour of understanding the whole picture before because we're talking about very significant a decision now, and it is a very significant amount. The different options, they're very significant amounts of money to the council's budget. So anyway, I'll take councillor's overall view. Would you have, I suppose that maybe that would be the recommendation, would be to delay until we have the full information on the whole asset. Would anyone support that recommendation?
The question is, how far do we delay? Delay.
So that's,
Then we could have.
well, it would come to council in December, that one. So
Sorry, I suppose Abby would. So how long would you think you would be able to get a ballpark figure for the housing element of the residential element of it to bring to council as part of this report? And of course, if that could you be able to do it by December, or would that just be impossible?
Well, I think that's what we're aiming to do. So December, you would have a full business case which sets out what the build cost would be and what the viability of the scheme is. That's what we're aiming for.
So could you delay? We're only delaying this by 1 month then. So if you're bringing it to if you're bringing this report, the 69 High Street report, commercial element, to October council,
22nd.
the 22nd. The next council meeting is the 2nd of December. Is that correct, Alex? Yeah.
Yeah.
So would it be feasible to be able to delay this one till the 2nd of December, and then you could add the?
I think it's impossible for us to say, if I'm being honest, because I think there are so many factors that we would need to consider, such as those I've touched on, the relationship with loungers and their expectations, because clearly the programme pushes out and they want to be end by Christmas next year. And then there's the overall kind of tender sum which has been submitted by the other party, and will they hold that for another 2 months, or recognising the markets?
Thank you. Yeah, thanks, Nabil.
If I may just simplify a bit, I think, as Abby says, we can't respond to that now.
No.
But what you may do is make a recommendation that there should be an additional option examined, which is the option to delay. but we would then need some time to do some work. So of course, there'll be some risks associated with that option, costs associated as well as benefits, and it'd be wrong to try and present it to you now what implications that option would be, because we haven't got that.
Well, should we put that, sorry.
Thanks, Chair. Then apart from the delay point, I'm finding this project difficult to understand, to be honest. And then do the officers agree with the basic statement they made here that we need this additional information in order to make any sensitive recommendation of what? Is the basic recommendation here correct?
I think I've been sent a note saying that basically, I'm not sure you're in the right position to answer that question.
I think that's
So,
the question for the
yeah.
executive.
But we're not in a position to answer it. How can we answer it?
Sorry, this might be a question for the executive.
Chairman, if I may just interject at this point, you know, we were 3.5 years down the road on this. And we're being then told, oh, well, you've got to make a very quick decision. And I find it a bit surprising that, you know, we're not being given all the information we need, in my view, to take a decision. And then we're being told, we've got to hurry. We've taken 3.5 years to get to this point, and we're suggesting a few more weeks in order to get a fuller understanding of the entire scheme. I don't think that's unreasonable for an overview and scrutiny committee to make that recommendation, and I would make it very strong.
Thanks, Councillor Higgins.
I may be missing something, but can you explain to me how the residential element and the costs on that side of things would impact our decision on the commercial element, or whether we go ahead with that?
Because this cost, one thing can't go ahead without the other. So this £540,000 enables the unlocking of the residential elements of the home. What we're talking on the retail element is how much cost is realised or lost. And, you know, if you look at what's been spent so far versus, you know, what we're talking about £3 million, aren't we? That's already, in theory, cost to our general fund and our HRA. And then in addition, what we don't know, what additional cost or loss, whatever you want to call it, may be on the retail element and how many years that will take. And in the balance of whether we're deciding whether to keep this asset, to sell this asset, to hold part of it, to hold all of it, I don't want to make that decision in the round without all of the information in front of me, because we're talking about millions of pounds. I hope that, does that help?
Yeah, no, I just wasn't, because obviously if this is social housing, there's not going to be any sort of financial benefit to the council. It's just the amount of money
But
you're going to
if you
spend.
were to sell, one of the options is to sell the commercial element on a long lease and retain the retail. Another option is to sell the whole. And if you sell the whole, you won't be selling it as affordable housing. You'll be selling it as a consented scheme for commercial, you know, like a normal housing.
Okay. Yeah, I mean, as I mentioned earlier, probably if we're going for a delay with additional information, I probably want to explore the original application as well, the costs of that, and also a more general valuation of the whole site, including the housing as well.
Thanks. Councillor Follows?
Thank you. First of all, can I just object to non-social housing being classed as normal housing? Just as an aside, as somebody who grew up in social housing, I also considered that normal. But just to be clear, I'm quite comfortable from the exec position agreeing in formal exec to look at what the cost of the delay would be, because I think that's a reasonable question to ask. If this were to come to December council, A, is that possible for officers to turn around? Because frankly, that is a pretty serious ask. And two, the delay has a cost and the delay has a risk. And is that something that council is also prepared to take? And I think probably the assessment of that cost and risk is something that officers probably can turn around, even probably before the 14th when we have exec. And that's something that we can answer then a little bit more in the round. But I do want to stress, because people keep talking about this as a financial cost benefit analysis, I'm hearing very little discussion about the loss of social housing, which would go along with stopping this process. So that's all from me, but I think that's where I would take it in the 14th.
Okay, there's no decision, of course. We're not deciding right now whether to keep or sell it. We're just trying to make sure that the options. Maxine, you were next.
Through you, Chair, can I ask Councillor Follows what the risk is if it delays by a few weeks?
Well, that's what I need to
There is,
quantify.
but it's coming to council anyway in December, the other part of it.
I mean, are we
So-
risking losing loungers? Is that the risk?
That is already a risk, yes.
So we could possibly lose loungers in 6 weeks.
I believe that is a risk on a number of the options which.
I thought they were like really into it.
They've signed an agreement for lease, so they have signed.
But Chairman,
Yeah,
if I
go on.
may, I mean, just to say again, this is 3.5 years into a scheme which we were told in August 23 we would deliver by 2025. And so I find it a bit rich to be saying, gosh, you know, this is suicidal, delaying by 6 weeks when we're 3.5 years in. I don't buy that.
And it's
And
coming to
we
committee.
really do have to look at that. And I think we do need to have all of the information to a greater degree than we have now. And I think I would formally ask the committee to vote on that.
Yeah, I think, shall we move to a vote? Otherwise, I think we'll be here all night, sorry.
Just one other thing,
yeah.
so can we know how tender this arrangement is with
Well,
loungers?
They've signed
We're
the
just
lease.
told that they've signed the lease, so why are we thinking that in 6 weeks they might back out?
Well, I don't think there's any difference in reality personally, but right, I'm sorry, I'm gonna move
Sorry.
on now because can we take a vote on that? Because
That's what I'm proposing.
Can I do mine with just really spelling out what the
Yeah,
recommendation
so
is?
I've written here that the executive considers an additional option to, what's the words I'm looking for? An additional option to delay the decision to the December full council, essentially. So
And
that we can,
to add further information on the housing element.
so that
Would you
the
like them as two separate recommendations?
committee had,
Well, I think the two go together, don't
well, the reason for the delay is in order
Yeah.
for,
Okay, so the recommendation might be to delay in order to be able to provide.
they? Additional information on the totality of the scheme to include the housing.
Okay.
so then there's a comprehensive financial breakdown and forward plan for the entire asset.
So that seems like a reasonably formulated recommendation.
Okay, shall we, councillor Merriweather?
Thank you, councillor Austin. Hopefully I may be able to contribute something constructive here. I think the risk is that I just want to be in by Christmas next year. So a few weeks delay at our end can impact their whole business cycle, you know, maybe for a year. So I think that's the risk as it should be perceived. I'd just like to also clarify something, and I think it might be councillor Higgins who mentioned option 3, just selling the commercial area of the site as it is now. The site as it is now is an undivided site, that the site hasn't been physically split. So when we talk about option 3, we are by definition talking about the whole site because it's an unsplit site. The split in the site only comes.
Sorry, I think we might need to move into exempt for that because the options are not, but the
Yeah, I'm
options.
deliberately trying to
Yeah.
avoid it, but
Oh.
councillor, I'm just referring to something that councillor Higgins suggested in open. And I just wanted to clarify that option is for the whole footprint. Because it hasn't been split up yet. That's all I wanted to say, just to avoid going down a rabbit hole.
Chairman, can I get on the point that was made about lounges? I would say that paragraph 7.7 of the report in August 2023 said that the interested tenant wants to be operating in the unit by 2025. At the time, we were led to believe that was possible. So, you know, again, I do wonder about, suddenly 6 weeks now is terribly important.
And the report earlier, in fact, the slide said, I think it's September, so there is still a bit of wiggle room. So should we vote on that recommendation? Is everyone happy to proceed on that recommendation to the executive?
Is that the recommendation? in the
No,
statement?
it's not. Should we read it out again?
Yes,
Yes.
I have,
Okay.
councillor Martin, I started to write it and then councillor Martin changed slightly, so
That the executive consider an additional option to delay the decision to December's full council in order for councillors to have comprehensive information on the whole of the scheme,
Including the housing.
including the housing.
Right, so thank you. We've got that on the webcast. Is everyone in the room comfortable on what they're voting on?
Yes.
Yeah.
Great. So all those in favour?
All those in favour? Okay, so that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Thank you. And then all those against? 1, 2. Any abstentions? There we are, 1 abstention. Thank you.
So
So that carries. There we are. Thank you. Right. Next. Now, Councillor Martin, do you want to just do the wording for your thing about the costs, the additional costs not stated should be included? Do you want to just?
We've circulated earlier information that Candice provided to us on the additional costs, the additional holding costs, if I can describe it in that way. That amounts to £173,789 thus far in this scheme, mainly business rates. And also there's a note of the £300,000 estimated interest that we might have received had we not spent this money. And that's up to date. So my recommendation is that as a note to the business case, we should include the holding costs and the foregone interest amounts in order to give us the fullest possible information.
Do you have that? Okay. Is everyone clear what they would be voting on? Yeah. Who is in agreement of carrying Peter's recommendation? I'm in agreement.
Just more financial.
More financial information in the report. 6. Thank you. Is anyone against? Any abstentions? 2 abstentions. Thanks.
so that is.
So that is carried. Thank you. I keep forgetting that bit. I would like to forward a recommendation that paragraph 6.7 of the report should not be included in the report to go to the executive, because it is not evidence. And I would also like to put forward a further recommendation that we have more background information on high street investment trends, local retailer trading performance, provided to the executive and then councillors in advance of those meetings. Yeah.
Can I comment on that? I'm not sufficiently expert to know what the results of vacant properties are on the high street. And I've heard one side say it detrimental, the other side say it isn't. Have you provided evidence that, towards your point, that is detrimental? As opposed to this statement that
well, I can tell you as a former high street investment and retail agent that vacancies on the high street are detrimental.
in every case?
Yeah. I would say in 99% of cases, yes, especially when they are major anchor tenant units like this one.
I mean, we get quite a lot of empty properties in Farnham.
Yeah.
And Farnham continues to thrive.
Yeah. When you have them vacant for a number of years, like we have in this case, it's a nightmare for the high street. Okay.
Is that accepted by?
Yeah, I think if you could go to 3 or go to as many major firms as you want to, and they would agree with me. Yes.
Is that accepted by the officer that that's the case?
Well, I don't think they're not retail agents. I think that's maybe not asking them a fair question.
Their report us that a good idea of a regenerating high street, and she had a big scheme. Even the government had an high street scheme, regeneration scheme, and they still do. And it's about filling empty shops, right? Yeah. It's about filling empty shops. So generally, the feeling is that empty stores are not a good idea, and if government can help fill empty stores, or councils can help, regenerate, and that's what Homes England do, and lots of other people do to try and get rid of as vibrant a high street as you can. So I think the idea that empty stores is a good idea is not. I would have thought not. I mean, you know what I mean? Everybody you hear on the news saying that we want to have as many full stores as we can, right? I don't think that's a good thing.
No,
Not saying that.
I can provide you with some reports after the meeting. I can't pull them up right now for you, Councillor McLeod. Shall we?
May I just make a factual point on the report? So the report absolutely does not say that vacant shops are a good thing.
No.
What the report makes clear is that bringing shops back into use is a good thing and is positive. And I would note that the intention of the decision is to bring this back into use. But I'll just stop there. But I know the executives here and they may wish to add to the the motivations for the scheme beyond the facts in the report. Thank you.
I think the point is that the report is only half glass full and not half glass empty. Councillor Follows.
Thank you, Councillor Austin. So just referring to Waverley's Health of the High Street reports that was issued in September, and it's issued every February and September, which does things like count the vacancies and track them over time, which is in fact, I think, the evidentiary basis that we're looking for what we're doing. This, by the way, is available now on the Waverley website. It's been shared and read by many councillors already. The 7% that is the vacancy rate in Godalming at the moment, that's 15 vacancies out of the 204.
8%.
It's 7%.
Oh, is it so?
Yeah.
I thought it was sorry.
And so that is actually 1% down on last year. In fact, it hasn't been 7% since September 2022. So I think you can infer from that data that actually there are less vacancies over the last nearly 2 years. Farnham is tacking about 7%, and actually that has gone up in vacancies year on year. But broadly, I think you'd find it difficult to establish an outright trend, but bearing in mind, I'm talking here from data that Waverley collect.
Yeah.
Okay, rather than anecdotal off the cuff
What can
comments.
be inferred also
Yeah.
from anecdotal high street traders, their spend is not as high.
I literally wrote that myself in my own Facebook post 3 days ago.
Right, so.
One more
Councillor
comment on
Murray.
that is that in Farnham, there's been lots of big retail hospitality businesses which have opened, Teller's Arms, the Verd Monkey, Megan's, all of them in the high street. Not one of them had any council funding. They've all been private, they've all been successful, they've all been regenerating the high street. Council hasn't bought big retail spaces and rented them out to any hospitality business. Not that I've.
There are a ton of social housing behind them.
Now, sorry, I'm chairing this meeting, so I think we need to now move on to the recommendations. Councillor Gabriel.
For me, 6.7, it says here that following the council's decision to progress with the acquisition of feasibility work, a number of private investors have expressed interest in the high street. I don't see that exampled anywhere.
There's nothing to evidence it whatsoever.
I don't see anything
So
here
which
that
is why I
says-
think that paragraph should be removed.
Unless we're looking at barbers, of course, because
Yeah.
there have been quite a lot of barbers.
So, okay, right, so should we move to a vote on that recommendation to remove paragraph 6.7?
Just because of the wording of that recommendation.
Yes.
Deal what we're voting on. So are we saying that it's the committee would like to recommend that if that wording such as that paragraph shouldn't be included
Should not be
in
included.
a report to the executive or council.
Correct.
So,
Thank you.
okay.
What you just said.
What he just said, yeah.
So the ONS committee would like to recommend that paragraph 67 is not presented to the executive
Or council.
or the council. Shall we take a vote on that?
I agree.
Who's in agreement?
Wouldn't make any difference. It's already ready.
All those in favour? It's not going to make.
No, we didn't. She's ready. I'll go and I'll vote for it.
1, 2, 3, 4. Against? 1, 2, and abstentions. 1, 2 abstentions. Okay. Carried. That is carried. That's the bit I keep forgetting. Thank you. And then my recommendation, I would like to propose that we get some more background information in writing as in the report, which is about the state of the high street. Would anyone like to vote for that recommendation? So my recommendation is that the executive is presented with more information on the state of the high street, and then for council consequently. Yes. Vote for 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. 4 against. 1 abstentions. 2. Thank you very much. So that is carried. Hooray! Now, I have a final one, which I've written today. I would like, it's not clear in the public papers about the cost versus the initial acquisition price. And I think that should be clearly stated in the public papers. So I've written here that there is a recommendation that the report to the executive includes the cost to date, estimated at approximately 3.4 million against the 2022 acquisition price, should be clearly stated, because it's not at the moment. It's not stated that actually what we're talking about here is how many millions of pounds this is going to cost the general fund overall. And I think that should be included.
Then that should be, it's public data,
It's
but
public
it's not
data.
assembled and put in the papers that we see in the non-exempt section.
Yes. Does that make sense as a recommendation?
Can you state it for us?
Oh, Peter, can you turn that into?
What we're trying to get at is we want to understand in the publicly available papers, in the non-exempt papers, the cost to date and cost of the budget versus the original acquisition. So we want to see an analysis of all of the costs to date and where we're going.
And sorry, is the recommendation that be included
In the report
goes
to the executive.
But a fuller analysis of all the costs, starting with the acquisition cost, adding, it's rather similar to the information that Candy's provided us yesterday.
Okay, that's sorry, just trying to understand, for the sake of the poor clerk.
So what I've put is the cost to date versus initial acquisition price should be clearly stated in the non-exempt report to executive stroke.
Correct.
Great,
That's
well done.
Thank you very much. Is anyone who would like to vote in favour of that recommendation? Seven. Would anyone like to vote against it? Are there any abstentions? One abstention. So that is carried. Thank you. I remembered it. I remembered to say it. Right, I think we've covered everything now that we can cover in public session. Frankly, I've not got that much more to say, but I think we do need to move into exempt.
Only if the committee wishes.
Do we, well, we have to move into exempt anyway now to discuss the asset register. So should we do that now? And then if anyone has anything they want to raise in exempt session on this item, we can do that. So can you
Read it out.
read out item 5? So item 5, exclusion of press and public. That pursuant to Procedure Rule 20 and in accordance with section 100A(4) of the Local Government Act 1972, the committee agrees 1, that the public be excluded from the meeting during consideration of the following matter on the grounds that it is likely, in view of the nature of the business to be transacted or the nature of the proceedings, that if members of the public were present during the item, there would be disclosure to them of exempt information as defined by section 100 of the Act. Of the description specified in paragraph 3 of the revised part 1 schedule 12A to the Local Government Act 1972, and 2, that the public interest in maintaining the exemption outweighs the public interest in disclosing the information. Thank you. Can everyone vote? Agreed?
Agreed.
That's carried. Thank you.
Right, I will now stop recording.